For Pet Connect, I'm Tara Douglas. I want to start today's segment with a big thank you to all of the people who have been coming out to the Sylacauga Animal Shelter to volunteer and to help in this transition time with our new manager there. We've got a great group of people that come out every Saturday and walk dogs. So if you're interested in walking dogs or if you're interested in coming out just to meet some dogs, we could use all the help we can get. And we're there every Saturday from 11 to 1. And we'll definitely make a Facebook post if we change that time, because it is getting pretty warm by 11 o'clock now that the summer hours have hit. So we are going to figure out possibly another time. But for right now, if you get there at 11 o'clock, we'll all be there walking dogs. And you can meet this next dog that I'm going to talk about. This is Kimberly. We have talked about Kimberly so many times, but now she had a little fashion show. So I decided that I would highlight her again. So she is our pet of the week. And Kimberly has grown up at the shelter. She was rescued with her litter on the side of the road, and there are 3 that are left in that litter. But out of the 3 that are left, she has the unique situation where she was able to go to a trainer and boarder for a couple of weeks, and she also lived with one of our regular dog walkers, Lynn Averett, for a week or 2. So she has been in a home. She has been cat tested, dog tested, people tested, and she is just a delightful dog. And please come out to meet her, because it is hard for us to find homes for black dogs in particular, and most of our rescues that we work with have plenty of black dogs, so it's hard for us to find a place for her to go. So this sweet dog deserves a home. So come on out on Saturday and meet her, or call the shelter if you want to go by and meet her anytime during the week. And let's find Kimberly a home and really get her out of there sometime in the next month or so. Now we're going to get on to our special guest today. We decided to talk about bees today, so we're going to have a great time. I have a local beekeeper. He's new to it. I got Larry Hale here with me. Larry, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Glad to be here.
I think people don't realize how important beekeeping is. I mean, bees have been around, people have been keeping bees for like 4,500 years. And
right.
When I was reading last night, I see that we have 212,000 beekeepers here in the U.S. alone.
That's a bunch.
So you've jumped into quite the popular pastime with your
ma'am.
bees. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm Larry Hale. I live in Stewartville, Alabama. Remodel houses for a living. Love it around here. Love Alabama. Love bees. Going to try to grow some.
So how did you get into beekeeping?
A friend of mine, we were working on his house. Well, I had a hive of bees move into the eave of my house.
Okay.
And I decided that I liked bees, and I was going to go ahead and try to rescue these bees and get them in a hive and try to keep them and raise them. So I bought a bee suit and a little toolkit and a hive and all of that. Well, before I actually got someone to come and help me get them out of the eave, they left.
Okay.
But the same fellow that I was talking to about that, he raised bees, and he called me a couple weeks after that and said, "Hey Larry, do you still have your beehive?" I said, "Yes sir, I do." He says, "Well, I've caught a hive of bees. If you want them, bring me your box and I'll put them in there for you and you can have your hive of bees." So I got a hive of bees, and I had them for about a year, and this March, about the 1st of March, they split off and made 2 hives, and I caught those, so I had 3 hives of bees, and about a month after that I went out there and they were gone. Every bee, there was no bees. They just disappeared. And I thought, well, I must have done something I wasn't supposed to, or didn't do something I was supposed to, but I don't know what happened to them. They all left.
Okay.
So I ordered some bees offline. Who'd have thunk it? I didn't know you could order bees offline, but I looked online, sure enough you can. So I ordered 2 hives of bees, and I got those about a month after the other ones had left, and they seem to be doing okay so far. They've decided to stay up to this date. They haven't left.
Good. They like their accommodations. So.
Well, they haven't left. I mean, they're suitable anyhow, so.
So tell me, Jonathan, my husband and I, we kept bees for a few years, our
Right.
backyard beekeeper. So I was hoping that between the two of us we could have some good information for people. We ordered our package of bees and got it from a local company when we
Right.
lived in Portland. How did your bees come to you with you ordering them? They come directly to your house, or what did
no,
you do?
they shipped them on a Thursday, and the post office called me Sunday morning about 6 o'clock and said, "We have your bees." So
Had they had bees at the post office
They had the
before?
bees at the post
But had they
office.
ever done that before? What did they think about
the
having
lady
bees
said
there?
that they had done bees before, and that they never deliver them to the house. That when they order bees, people have to come pick them up from the post office because they don't want them riding around in the delivery truck.
That's one thing
That's
that-
what they
yeah.
told me.
I
Yeah.
thought that we had made a really bad decision in our life when we got our bees and we showed up at the place to get them, and you carry them out. Chris just showed a picture on the screen of one of the packages of bees. There's Jonathan up in a tree catching our swarm, but we had a package of bees, and the screen is on there, and we saw people walking out of that facility getting their bees. They're carrying them like they were a bomb.
Right.
And thought, oh my gosh, we've got to put those bees in our car. And so we have a Subaru. We couldn't put them in a trunk or anything. So we had those
it's
bees
wide
just sitting
open.
right behind us.
Right.
And so, yeah, that was an interesting thing to drive down the highway and have
was.
a couple of package of bees. So I'm sure the mailman doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, well, and they really had
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
a cool way of sending the bees. They were in a little wood box,
Mm-hmm.
the screen on two sides of it with a little metal can, like a soup can with holes in it, that was full of sugar water that
Mm-hmm.
the bees could have to eat while they were, in transport. And I guess they left three days worth of food in there, is what they had told me. So it was really a neat way. When they came, they had both boxes of bees nailed together by a couple
Mm-hmm.
pieces of wood.
And there was your box. Like, can you see the screen
Yeah,
there?
exactly.
That's
Exactly.
That's what ours came in. So
Yeah, it was exactly like that. And there was probably 4 or 5 bees that somehow had made it outside. And the lady at the post office realized, there's some outside, but they were all, they were sticking with the queen. They weren't
Yeah.
trying to do anything, so.
And that's what most people don't understand, is that when you have a swarm of bees, or when you get those packages of bees, honeybees aren't mean. They don't. I mean,
Right.
there's us pouring our bees into our hive there. They have nothing to protect when they don't have a hive, so they're
Right.
not going to attack you
Right,
to get close.
right.
And so it's so important that if people find a swarm of bees, that you don't spray them, you don't kill them.
Right.
They're going to find a place to live. That's what they're doing.
Right.
They're regrouping, sitting there waiting, and they have those worker bees. Some of them, their job is to find that next hive, that next place to live, which you hope
An
is not in your
amazing-
eaves at your home.
An amazing hierarchy, is that what you would call that? How that works?
It's amazing because they all have those jobs.
Right,
And until
right.
you have kept bees, you don't even know that. But I'm
Right.
sure you've read up on everything. with that.
I haven't as much as I should have.
Oh, well.
I've read a little bit, but most of the time it's been, I'll see something, I got to learn about this, and I'll look it up online, or one of the books that folks have been so generous to give me, including your husband gave me a real nice book. And I actually did start reading it the other day. I got about 20 pages read in it, but I've only had it a couple of days.
There's so much information out there.
There is. And I'm a hands-on person. I learn so much better when I get to screw it up myself. When I mess it up myself, I seem to learn it very thoroughly then, and that mistakes don't happen again,
And the good thing with bees is, like we were talking before the show, they've lived without us for thousands and thousands of years.
Millions of years.
So you can have a hive, and we had a patient in Vancouver that lived out in the country, just had a hive and left it, and just let the bees do their thing. And if you're in a neighborhood, then you need to be more careful, because you
Sure.
can have swarms. Like this swarm, this is one that went to our neighbor's yard from our hive.
Right.
And so just to be respectful of your neighbors, then you tend to be more careful with those hives. But where
Sure,
you are,
sure.
the bees
It's
could just
pretty much out in
live
the
a great
country.
life.
Yeah. And this spring, which I got to learn a tremendous amount about the swarming of the bees, because I walked out there one morning and was looking at my bees, and I turned around and there was a wad of bees as big as a basketball hanging in one of my azalea bushes. So, of course, once again, I knew nothing. I did not know what to do, so I took a picture of it. I sent it to your husband, and just with a question, what do I do? And he sent me some basic instructions on how to get them out of the bush, and I thought, well, gosh, that's just too easy. And it was really true. It just took a 5-gallon bucket and clipped the little branches out from underneath where the hive was, and I put the bucket under there and smacked the branch, and every one of them fell in the bucket. Put the lid on it, and it was a done deal.
It is crazy how easy it is.
It was really amazing, and there was probably less than 50 bees that weren't in the bucket. There was just a few, and then I changed the lid and put one with a screen on it because I had to get my hive ready and have a hive ready when I caught them. So I put a screen on there, and all the other loose bees, they just came up and piled up on the bucket. So all the bees were there. They just,
they stay with that queen.
They stayed with the queen, and Jonathan told me, he said, when you take the hive apart and you put the bees, just take that bucket and bump it. They'll all go to the bottom of the bucket, and you just pour them in there just like liquid. And he said, and it'll go in there just like liquid. And I thought, oh, yeah, right. You got these million bugs with wings on them, and they're going to pour into the hive just like liquid. You know what? Those things poured into the hive just like liquid, and probably wasn't more than 10 or 15 bees that escaped out before I could get the top back on there.
It's the weirdest thing.
It was amazing.
That you definitely don't believe until you actually do it.
Right. And I didn't. I just thought, how can that be? It just didn't seem physically possible that it was going to work like that. But apparently when the bees are wadded together like that, they have a hard time separating themselves from that cluster and getting airborne. And that's what it appeared to me, was that they just had a hard time getting airborne. It's like they had to separate and then fly off. So if you're quick enough, they don't get away.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough. Our first swarm, we didn't know what to do, so we were panicking, like, what do we do? And fortunately, our neighbor grew up with parents that kept bees, so he knew everything about it. And he had a friend that had some hives and wanted that. We didn't have an extra hive, so he wanted that swarm. So he called his friend. They came over. His kids were in the window watching everything happening. But that guy climbed up that tree, and he got a bucket underneath the swarm and just shook the limb really hard, and every one of those bees fell in that bucket. And he put a lid on it, crawled down, and he was out of there. So once we saw that,
that's the same experience I had with them, and it was just amazing that it really is that easy. First time I saw bees like that I was in high school in Yuma, Arizona, and I came home from school one day, and there was a cloud of bees in the backyard. I mean, so thick you couldn't hardly see through them. And they all lit on the eave, and it was a wad. Oh, it was huge. It was probably 16, 18 inches across and hung down about 2 feet. Huge wad of bees. So, of course, we didn't know anything, didn't know what to do. And Mom called, I think I was 13, 14 years old. Mom called a beekeeper, and they came out there, and the fella, no gloves, no hood, nothing, came out in flip-flops and a pair of short pants and a t-shirt. Put a 6-foot ladder underneath that eave, put a cardboard box on top of it. He climbed up that ladder and said, whoop, scraped his hand across the bottom of that eave. That wad of bees fell in the box. He put the lid on it, said, thank you, ma'am, and went out. Cost us $200 to have bees. Cape charged too, and that was 40 years ago, just about.
We had a swarm in our hive, and Jonathan was in the backyard and heard it happening, so he came and got me. And so, like I said, we were in a neighborhood, so we didn't want the bees to go to a neighbor and upset a neighbor. We started following that swarm of bees around. So Jonathan and I were walking through our neighborhood in the middle of this giant swarm of bees, just trying to figure out where they were going to go, so we would know and we could get them out of that person's yard. And people were driving by looking at us like we were nuts, walking around in that swarm. But a bee's not going to attack you. They're trying to figure out where to go at that point. So you're just walking around the middle of them.
Well, and my understanding too is that when they leave the hive, they gorge themselves with honey. And now this
like
was
after
just
Thanksgiving
something
dinner.
Right, it was something that was told to me. I haven't really read this anywhere or anything, but they have a hard time stinging you because it elongates their bodies, and they have a hard time getting their stinger out to be effective. So, but that's what I had heard.
And there's so many interesting facts. I mean, get on Google, pull that book out. There's so many interesting things about bees that I had no idea until we had
how they figure out where they're going to move through a series of dance or sign language.
It's crazy. They can get out and find a spot, and they come back, and then they show everybody where to go, and then
I read some stuff that there have been some folks that have been studying the bees and their form of communication, and they say that the scout bees they'll swarm, and they'll find a spot, and they'll be hanging in a tree, and then the scout bees leave there, and they're looking for a new home, and then they'll come back to the hive, and through a community describe the location, size, dimensions, entrance facing directions, all kinds of different stuff, exact location, through sign language, and then the whole hive can just take off and go there, and they all know where it's at because of the directions that one bee gave them.
It's amazing.
It's incredible.
It really is.
I
and
can't
so,
do that
I
good,
know.
you know.
It'd be great if we all work together, people work together,
If people work
as well
together
as
the
bees.
same that the bees
Yeah.
do, we'd all be better off.
Because all those bees, they do such an amazing job.
They
and when you
do.
read up on it and hear about all the different jobs that they have and how you got one that protects the hive, and we used to have yellow jackets that they would kill your beehive.
Right,
And we would go out and there'd be a bee right at the entrance to the hive just fighting a yellow jacket just
Yeah.
to the death,
Yeah,
so that yellow
exactly.
jacket would get in there and kill the bees. And
Right,
Now
exactly.
another thing that's important with the hive though is when they told us early on that skunks and raccoons, they like to eat your hive,
Right,
and to
right.
raise the hive up, because if it's just sitting at ground level, especially a skunk will just eat every single bee that comes through there,
Right.
and a raccoon will too.
Yeah.
But if you raise it up, they don't want to expose their belly, and so
Right.
they won't mess
I
with
could
your hive.
understand that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want mine exposed in there
Yeah,
either.
because
That'd be
even though
pretty
we're
rough.
talking about walking around in a swarm of bees, if you mess with their hive, then
Things are different.
they're going to have some that are guarding it. They're going to come after you. But it's a fascinating world.
It
and
is.
the
It
interesting
is.
thing is, if you find a beekeeper that you want to talk to, they will tell you about bees. Larry and I could probably talk 20 more minutes about bees and the things
good.
that we've learned. But
And
we,
still knowing nothing.
I know.
Yeah.
so
yeah.
we were hoping that between the two of us we'd have some good information about bees. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And come on out to the shelter this Saturday and walk some dogs from 11 to 1 and come meet Kimberly so that we can find a home for this sweet dog. There'll be more Daybreak after these messages.